very wonderful day, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. You're watching Smart24 TV, and we do drive your business. Now, my name is Anthony, and I am your host. This is Financial Markets, where we get down to break down some of the most recent updates coming in from the different segments of the stock markets and other trending stories in the different segments of the financial markets in East Africa, as well as here in Uganda and at the global level. The show is every morning at exactly 10 a.m. And thank you very much that you're joining us at this moment. You can hit us up on Twitter at Smart24 TV or on Facebook at Smart24 TV Official, as well as on my personal handle, that is at Anthony Sebale. And you will be able to get the latest on all the different stock markets here in Africa, as well as on the global markets as well. Now, the show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa, your #1 private stock exchange. And of course, they do bring you treasury bond markets with the convenience of your phone. Now, by dialing *292#, you can be able to buy or sell treasury bonds on the secondary market using Altex East Africa, your #1 private stock exchange. They are regulated by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda, and of course they do bring you now into this market with that convenience I just mentioned, and of course one of a kind that we haven't seen in East Africa before. Altex markets open at exactly 15 past 8 a.m. and close at 15 past 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. Now, thank you very much for choosing to join us this morning, and without delay, let's get into the stock market performances for yesterday. Remember, the markets really have been struggling, generally speaking. When you look across Africa, when you look at markets in South Africa, our biggest market in Africa, you look at West Africa, when you look at Central Africa, as well as East African markets, generally they do depict the entire macroeconomic situation in the countries in these regions. And of course, it hasn't been a good one. Of course, following the COVID-19 pandemic recovery period, which wasn't actually really fully realized, because as soon as we were coming out of the pandemic, then we had other economic challenges that were onset by the Russia-Ukrainian war, and the war is still going on, but despite that, we are still facing global inflation, which has become a very big hindrance to the markets here in Africa. Now, generally speaking, when you look at Ghana Stock Exchange, there was no movement in the benchmark index, showing a static kind of picture. There was a 0.0% movement, meaning there was no gain or loss on the Ghana Stock Exchange. On Johannesburg Stock Exchange, things were a little bit better after the index, which is the benchmark, that is the J203, gained about 370.51 points. And then when you look at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, just like the Uganda Stock Exchange, there was a decline in not only the number of participants, but also the points on the benchmark index, and that is the All-Share Nairobi Index. And this tracks the aggregate performance of all the listed securities on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Also looking at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, we had an appreciation of 115 points on their benchmark index. Remember, Nigerian Stock Exchange continues to be one of the top performers for the year 2022 on the African continent, via market activity, but also via resilience in these difficult economic times that we have been facing as a continent. When you go to Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, which is another very great stock exchange in Africa, a 10.71 points increment was realized on their benchmark index. And of course, they do have a staggered or volatile market, but a little bit inclined to the gaining side generally for the past 3 or so months on the stock exchange. Now let's get back home first of all and get to look at the Uganda Stock Exchange. Remember, we do always support our local exchange here first and foremost before going on to others, of course, to diversify. But generally speaking, we must, of course, have interest back at home. Now, the Uganda Stock Exchange has 18 companies that are currently listed on the stock exchange. Later on, I'll be talking about a story of Airtel's journey of getting listed on the stock exchange, which hasn't actually come to pass yet. There was, of course, a lot of speculation that by December this year, by the end of this year, Airtel Uganda would be one of the listed equities on the Uganda Stock Exchange. However, that did not come to pass because of reasons, of course, we shall discuss later on the show. But currently, as I have mentioned before, we have 18 companies that are listed on the stock exchange, and 10 of these are domestically listed, meaning they are found and listed from Uganda, and then 8 of them are cross-listed mainly from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Now, on the first day of trading, which was Monday, yesterday, we had 4 companies participate in the trading for the first day, and the day ended with 2 gainers and disappointingly 4 losers on the market. And this is in terms of market price, really. And when you look at the top gainers, Nation Media Group led the top gainers at a 1.15% gain, and Centum Investments Company led also at a 0.07% gain there. Later on, we'll also look into Centum. There are some stories, of course, coming in from Centum Investments and their investment in a coal-powered plant there in Kenya that didn't go so well for them there. And of course, Centum has also had a very rough year, selling some of its assets like Sidian Bank to a Nigerian lending company, and so many other economic challenges that actually Centum has gone through, just speaking of the year 2022. Now, on the losing side, on the stock exchange, we had Jubilee Holdings who came out at an end of day price depreciation of 1.67%, and closing the day with a price of 6,009.3 Ugandan shillings. Equity Bank Limited as well lost a 1.19% of their trading price on the first day of trading, and East African Breweries lost about 1.03% of their price as well. Kenya Airways lost a 0.42% on their price, and the Bank of Baroda was the top mover on the markets. Now, talking about movers, and these are participants, of course, we had, like I said, about 4 participants in the day's trading, and Bank of Baroda led the participants by volumes. Bank of Baroda traded the highest volume of close to 246,900 shares on the stock market, and followed by Umeme Limited, who traded 105,533 shares on the markets. And then Stanbic Bank Uganda traded about 27,500 shares on the market, coming in the 3rd place. And in the 4th place, MTN Uganda at 1,500 shares per, of course, that as per MTN stock on Monday. Now, these figures generally show a decline in the volume compared to the trading on Friday. We had a 50%, however, there was a decline in turnover, rather, about 14%, but the volumes improved by 50% on the stock market, from close to 150,000 shares to 381,000 shares in total at the Uganda Stock Exchange. And of course, like I mentioned, market activity has been quite slow most recently. We, of course, are looking at the economic situation in the country, inflation, and other economic problems and challenges that currently are facing of course, the macroeconomic environment in the region. But we still have resilience, especially amongst some stocks. And looking at Bank of Baroda here, who was the top participant or mover on the market. This is a financial institution incorporated in 1969 as a subsidiary of Bank of Baroda, India, and is one of the leading banks in East Africa and here in Uganda. Now, currently, the bank has a total value of 213 billion Ugandan shillings worth of shares that are floated on the stock exchange, and this represents about 1.02% of the entire 21 trillion market capitalization of the Uganda Stock Exchange. This makes Bank of Baroda to be the 12th most valuable company via market capitalization as per the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, on Monday, we had a total volume of 246,900 shares, and these were valued at 21 million Ugandan shillings that were traded on the stock exchange on Bank of Baroda. And currently, the market capitalization is maintained at 213 billion Ugandan shillings after, of course, the stock price of Bank of Baroda was maintained at 85.0 Ugandan shillings despite the day's trades. The bank has, of course, registered some losses on its year to date, and beginning the year with a price of 95.50. Currently, the bank has lost 11% of their trading price and ranking this bank the 7th in terms of year-to-date performance on the exchange. However, Bank of Baroda lost also its spot as the first and most traded on stock on the stock exchange in the last 3 months. It lost that, of course, to Stanbic Bank Uganda and was thrashed back to the 4th position. Now, currently, Stanbic Bank Uganda is in the 1st position in terms of intensity of market activity. And then we do have Wumeme in the 2nd position, MTN in the 3rd position, and Bank of Baroda Uganda stock coming in the 4th position. In the last 3 months or so, from the 7th of September to the 5th of December 2022, the Bank of Baroda Uganda has traded a total of about 4.42 million traded shares valued at 376 million Ugandan shillings. Now, that's quite something for a financial institution like Bank of Baroda Uganda over just 1 month, transacting about 376 million Ugandan shillings over the period. Now, when you look at their average number of shares traded per session, they do have a 70,192 volume traded on average every trading session in these last 3 months. And when you're looking at the past 10 days of trading, besides the 5th of December, their last trading was on 28th of November with a total of 2,800 shares. I would say they are arguably one of the most resilient stocks this year, trying, of course, to maintain their price and also giving dividends. They were affected by the Bank of Uganda's policy on financial institutions, not allowing them to issue or give out dividends in the year 2020 and in the year 2021, of course, due to COVID-19 pandemic and other capital reservation reasons. But they did have the offer of over 25 billion worth of dividends to their shareholders later on this year, of course, as a reward for the years 2020 and 2021. So if you're out there looking for dividends, definitely Bank of Baroda is one company to consider, but also in terms of activity, they're not doing bad at all. Now, away from Bank of Baroda, we did have Wumeme at exactly about 10,000 shares, 105,000 shares, 533 in total. And when you look at the Umeme stock currently, their stock price is still maintained at 210.0 Ugandan shillings per share. And currently, the company, which was listed in 2012, is valued at exactly 341 billion Ugandan shillings. And this is the 10th position in terms of market capitalization. And also the company represents 1.63% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange equities market here. After trading about 105,000 shares, they did have a total turnover of 22.2 million Ugandan shillings. Well, they do come on age when it comes to turnover, and this is where they beat most of the other stocks. And looking at, of course, the quarterly performances for the Uganda Stock Exchange in the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, Umeme by far was the biggest company in turnover. That is in terms of the amount of money that is transacted on the stock exchange. Of course, they do take advantage of the fact that they do have a good pricing at 210 shillings, but also the investors in the company are quite active, and we do have a lot of foreign investors within this one. Now, when you look at their 4-week performance, currently they are on a gain of 5% from 200 shillings to 210.0 shillings. It's one of those companies really that have maintained their gains for quite some time and sustained them. The company currently, looking at their also 3 months performance, they did come from 200 shillings to 210 shillings, which is also still their 4 weeks performance. And this shows you how resilient the stock is on the Uganda Stock Exchange. They did begin the year with 189.0 Ugandan shillings and have since then gained about 11% on their year-to-date performance, ranking them the number 2. That is the second best performance in year-to-date performance. Umeme is still also the second most traded on stock, as earlier mentioned. And in the last 3 months, we are counting from 7th of September to the 5th of December, about close to 20.6 million traded shares valued at 4.2 billion Ugandan shillings on the stock market. The last 10 days of trading have been also quite much better compared to most of the other stocks, at 105,000 last night and 215,000 on Friday last week, about 119,000 on Thursday, and so on and so forth. So the company is still quite tradable, with a lot of interest and a lot of attention from foreign investors here on the company. Now, directly towards the year to date, also looking at the all-share index, which is basically the aggregate performance tracker on the Uganda Stock Exchange. The all-share index dropped about 8.58 points, and this was a 0.7% points off their last trading points, and they closed at 1,208.74 points. And this was a representation of about a 0.08% loss in a week, and about a 1.93% loss in the last 1 month. And the overall year-to-date loss has also gone up to 14.92% of the all-share index. On the other hand, the local company index maintained its value at 268.57 points, basically because most of the local companies, despite the fact that they participated in the market, maintained their stock prices, and thus the market capitalization there was not affected that much. The local company index, however, is still suffering a loss of 0.01%. in terms of their last 1 week performance, and in 4 weeks it has lost about 0.09% of their stock price, and then the year-to-date loss is currently at 17.28%, and that's basically the local company index on aggregate. And in summary, we did have about 381,433 shares, corresponding to a market value of 43,995,000 Ugandan shillings traded on the market. Compared with the previous trading day, Friday, the 2nd of December, the data showed a 50% improvement in the volume and exactly 14% decline in the turnover. However, currently the current market capitalization also dropped slightly from 21 trillion to 20.9 trillion Ugandan shillings. Of course, courtesy of mainly the cross-listed stocks that lost some value there on the market. That's it from the Uganda Stock Exchange. Remember, to trade on the Uganda Stock Exchange, you must be dealing with a licensed stockbroker. We do have 5 licensed stockbrokers in Uganda, and that is Dyer and Blair. We do have Standard Bank Group Securities, SBG. We do have Crested Capital, UAP Old Mutual, and Cheaper Technologies. Do not be duped. You must be dealing with a licensed entity so you can actually realize your dreams trading on Uganda's stock markets. We are going to take a commercial break, and when we return, we get to look into the top stories on the markets and get also into the Nairobi Stock Exchange and other markets across Africa, giving you the latest. You're watching SMART24 TV, and we drive your business. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
SMART24, driving business. SMART24, driving business.